The reigning World Cup champions and the reigning European champions kicked off their 2023 Women's World Cup campaign with a win. One of them was quite impressive, the other slightly underwhelming. So let's talk about it. The United States women's national team faced Vietnam, who are debuting in the World Cup, as their opening game and won comfortably 3-0. On the other hand, it was England, who also faced debuters Haiti, but did not have so much of a comfortable win. It was a 1-0 victory through a penalty. Starting off with the England-Haiti game, first of all, let's give some massive props and credit to what Haiti were able to do. If you were able to watch any of my World Cup group talk episodes, which if you haven't and you're interested, absolutely head to my playlist for that one. But speaking of that group, I was extremely complimentary of Haiti because having watched them over the last few years in the CONCACAF, specifically this year and their qualifications route, for me, it was not so much of a surprise to see them do what they did because they were unpredictable, they were transitional, and my god, the athleticism was absolutely unreal. Like, there are very few nations, none that come to my mind throughout the history of the women's game, which is why none come to my mind because I haven't been living for as long as that hold the athleticism of Haiti. Like, it's unreal. And the narrative here shouldn't be, oh, why did England have a bad game? Why aren't England able to do this? Like, why did England just have a bad day at the office? It's more so, how did Haiti make sure England had a bad game? We need to switch the narrative a little bit around here because had it not been for Haiti's really disciplined shape, their off-ball positioning was honestly absolutely unreal, a little bit unexpected from my end. Like, I knew it was good, I just didn't think it was that good. Their exciting talent, their long throw-ins, like, I loved seeing that in play, is exactly why England had a bad game. So let's start talking about England a little bit here. It's been about 360 minutes since England last scored from open play, that being against Brazil at Wembley when it was the Copa America champions against the European champions. Since then, they have struggled to score from open play, and there's a lot of questions around that. Obviously, one of the biggest ones that people are bringing up are injuries. So let's talk about injuries. Obviously, we know they're out of Fran Kirby, Beth Mead, and Leah Lowenson, which is kind of an interesting spread of players because it's 3 players from 3 different lines on the pitch, and all 3 of them were starters at the Euro. So obviously, you've got Arsenal defender Leah Williamson in the back, Fran Kirby in the midfield, Chelsea's, and then you've got Beth Mead in the front lines. And this kind of spread of the players that they have missing is quite interesting. It's not like you have a bench player who's a center back that's missing, but then you've also got the main center back. It's like they're all scattered around from every single line. And sure, we can talk about how they're missing the ruthlessness of Beth Mead, but I think the major and big question here is that number 10 spot. For me, and even I talked to Rich about this in my World Cup group talk episode when previewing England, is how are they going to replace Fran Kirby's number 10? Is it going to be Ella Toone or is it going to be Lauren James? And I think that is still kind of in question. Number 10s for me are kind of the fuel for the fire of an open play creation, of an open play attack. Open play is like exactly the number 10 that you need to have. A good number 10 gives you good open play service. And number 10s need to be given that freedom, need to be given that service. So what we had at the Euros was Fran Kirby is one of the best midfielders and one of the best number 10s in the world. Like, that is just a proven given fact. And the ruthlessness of the midfielders behind her gave her enough service. So she had the skills, she had the individual brilliance, she had the freedom of movement that she just normally exploits, and she had that service, which is exactly what we saw happen at the Euros. This time around, you don't have that Fran Kirby style, and Toone is a player that kind of sits a little bit deeper than Fran Kirby, so she requires a little bit more service than Fran Kirby, which is something that I don't believe England have yet been able to adapt to just yet, and so Toone for me was a little bit too quiet. Now, has she lost a little bit of creativity from what we have seen her do at the Euros? Absolutely. I don't think Toone is coming in on the best form of her life. Like, I think that would have been maybe last summer. So not only is she lacking to find that creativity, she struggled to get that service, which is we go back down to the 2 players in the midfield, Georgia Stanway and Kara Walsh. My God, did Haiti make sure they shushed Kara Walsh completely. I mean, De Mornay just made sure she followed her the entire 90 minutes. Whether Kara Walsh was running to the left or the right or just simply standing in the middle, De Mornay was on her. Like, she just stalked and obsessed around that movement and gave Kara Walsh absolutely no chance of receiving the ball. She made sure De Mornay was in that passing lane where Keira Walsh, had she intercepted the ball, there was nowhere to go, which meant she was pushing that in England midfield not only to be restricted and suffocated, but to make mistakes, which is another thing that I saw during the narrative, is that England's defensive line, which was not great, and we'll touch on that a little bit, of Millie Bright and Lucy Bronze were a little bit shaky. They clearly were not the sharpest, and they gifted Haiti a lot of possession. They didn't gift Haiti any kind of position. It wasn't gifting. It was Haiti's press, and it was Haiti's off-ball positioning, again, exquisite, that put pressure on the defenders, put pressure on Lucy Bronze to be out of position, to leave gaps behind her, for them to make sloppy mistakes, and for Haiti to get the ball. So there was no gifting here. England don't gift possession in the back. You have to push them to make these mistakes, which is what Haiti did. So let's recognize here that Haiti did a very, very well job in putting England in that position. Now, obviously, England should be sharper under pressure and should be able to adapt, to know how to deal when they are, around players who do have very good off-ball positioning. Lauren Hemp, for me, in the second half, almost went completely silent. They could not beat those fullbacks. So you can't beat the fullbacks and you're struggling to build anything centrally because your number 10 is a little bit quiet. It was a little bit lackluster for England, which is why they looked as slow as they did. They looked a little bit kind of disconnected. Lauren James slotted in. For me, it started to get a lot brighter when she came in. We started to see a little bit more closer shots, neater shots. Maybe she could be slotting into that number 10 position. It'll be interesting to see. But for England, they need to be a little bit more ruthless. For Haiti, my God, was I so impressed. And I already expected they're going to be presenting challenges and just diversity of different things that they're going to be putting on the pitch, but aggressive, purposeful positioning was just incredible, unbeatable on the duels. Again, like these are terms you don't say when you're going up against England. Like, opposition doesn't usually come out as the ones winning every single duel. Like, it's crazy how good of a game Haiti had. It was incredible, and honestly, such a bright team. Like, I really, really hope they can cause some kind of upset and go through, because my God, did they deserve a bit of a few points almost. Like, if we can give a half a point, maybe they didn't get some points, but they surely did win a lot of fans over with this one. Shifting gears over to the US, again, there was a lot of looming questions of what kind of formation we were going to see, what kind of starting lineup we were going to see, and I think actually Vlatko kind of nailed this one. Not a sentence I thought I was going to be saying this early on into the competition, but I'm kind of glad I am. One of those biggest concerns were the backline and who is going to operate that 6-8 role, and is Rose Lavelle fit? So what we got a lot of answers. Is that one, Rose Lavelle is fit, and my God, did I miss her filthy work on the pitch. Like, I absolutely enjoyed it, and I kind of want to see her get like a full 90 against the Netherlands. That will be really, really fun. And in the back, I can't say I really predicted this one because she hasn't played regularly in that position. She hasn't started in that position for the United States for like over 7 years. Julie Ertz slotting into center back with Girma. I really, really enjoyed those two in the back. And there's a really iconic storyline there, because Girma, for me, is obviously one of the future legends for the United States. Like, that's just a given. It's going to happen. Hall of Famer. She is it. Like, you think defensive line for the next 10 years for the U.S., Girma is in that conversation. And so pairing those two up, I really enjoyed. They handled that pressure really well. It looked like a very good mix of knowing when to pull up, when to fall back. And it wasn't like, let's be honest, they didn't really have to defend a lot of tough balls. It wasn't like they were under attack. There was not really a concession of really dangerous balls that were coming towards them. But when they did, and when maybe a little bit of pressure was on them, they dealt with it very, very well. Great communication, didn't look shaky at all. A lot of these mistakes that we were seeing previously under Vlatko weren't happening. Really, really enjoyed it. I think that center back pairing will be really fun. But it does lead to our other question of that number 6 role. Andy Sullivan, I thought, was stable. Enjoyed kind of being calm, holding that midfield, allowing the midfielders around her to play, connecting with them. But is she the only number 6 we're going to see? If not, is Julie Ertz going to be that backup? And if Julie Ertz come out of that center back, is it going to be Cook in there? So it's a question of rotation here. Those 3 players that are working very closely to each other, because yes, Andy Sullivan looked like a perfect number 6 for what Vlatko was looking for. Shall an injury come up, or shall you have to rotate a little bit of the squad? Who comes into that number 6, which is a very important question to have to explore. There's definitely options on the bench that you could have said, but as a starting 11, do you pull Julie Ertz into that 6? Do you change formation? What happens then? And maybe it's a question that won't have to be addressed. Maybe Annie Sullivan continues to be on what she did just yesterday for the next few games. Like, maybe we don't have to come up with that question, but it's certainly something that I would hope Vlatko and his staff are looking into and thinking about behind the scenes. Savannah DeMello getting her first start, only her second cap, but she looked so comfortable. She looked so smooth in there, like silky movement, and she absolutely deserved this call up. I was really, really happy to see her get called up, and I was even just again very pleasantly surprised to see her start. She looked confident, dealt with pressure really well. She had a lot of moments where she relieved pressure in that midfield, connecting really well with Lindsey Horan, service up front. Like, she was really impressive, and I'm not surprised to see her do that, but I'm not surprised to see her play that good, having followed her for as long as I've, specifically the last 2 seasons in the NWSL. It's not surprising to see her do what she was doing. So for that midfield, it looks comfortable. And I thought Lindsey Horan even had it. Obviously, she did score a goal of her own. It was a good game for the U.S. women's national team midline and backline. A few concerns, however, up top with finishing. It's been a consistent issue we've seen where they hold the play a little bit too long. Maybe it's just fire shots specifically against the opposition that they were coming up against, but which, by the way, Vietnam's goalkeeper had an absolutely incredible game. Like, if Sophie Smith wasn't on fire, it probably would have gone to her that she won the player of the match. It's just unfortunate that Sophie Smith scored a brace and an assist. There was a noticeable height difference between the Vietnamese goalkeeper and the U.S. women's national team. Clearly, that is something they looked at because they were playing a lot of crosses, very, very high dinky balls. But taking a closer look at that front line, it's something that we have seen before where they're not clinical enough and they hold up that play a little too long, where maybe it's just you need to fire it. Sophie Smith, I predicted that she was going to win the Golden Boot. Very, very happy to see her get a brace and an assist, because that means she is en route to win that Golden Boot and for my prediction to be correct. But my God, I mean, if you really have been watching the NWSL, and as a Portlanda fan, as a Canadian, obviously I have to support my Portlanda. She's just so good. It's like she's a combination of Sam Kerr, Marta, a little bit of like a tiny Katoto with how two-footed she is, and just like a silent killer. That's what she's been nicknamed, and really she is a bit of a silent killer. She's just so good. She's so good. Like, in her debut, by the way, this is her World Cup debut, a brace and an assist. Like, you've got to be mad to be doing that. Like, this is only Sophie Smith stuff. Alex Morgan obviously missed the penalty, but honestly, other than the penalty, she had a pretty good game, making really good pockets, was involved in that first goal build-up. Really, really nice, impressive stuff from her. Alex Morgan is just Alex Morgan. Trinity Rodman, also really bright movement on the flank. I expect her to continue growing into the competition and really the World Cup. Really impressed to see her start, but for overall, this was a relatively good start for the US. There were some questions about the back and the midline. They kind of addressed that. Frontline need to sharpen up that ruthlessness and just take a shot. Just take a shot and don't hold up that play a little bit too much. Obviously, like, take a shot, like a good proper shot on target. We did see a few shots that just absolutely were horrendous. But this is not the type of opposition they're going to get in the next game. They obviously have the Netherlands coming up. Netherlands are not going to sit as deep as Vietnam did. Netherlands are not going to be so defensively weak in certain areas as Vietnam. Maybe in other areas. The Netherlands are going to present a lot of challenges in the middle, where the number 6 spot of Andy Sullivan is going to have some obstacles to face. Van de Donk, Jill Roord, some of those names in the middle will present problems. On the wings, you've also got Lika Martens and Bernstein. We didn't get to see a lot of the US fullbacks get challenged. So for the Netherlands, it's going to be a much bigger game, a much different game, and maybe a lot of those questions that I just presented that I thought were answered, we're going to go up against. Regardless, this is quite a bright start for the US, and it was a great crowd that they brought up. So it's a dub. 3 points, good goal difference as far as I'm concerned. A missed penalty, but that's kind of been the trend this World Cup. Not bad at all for them. It's been really fun watching a lot of these games, even though they're happening at 3, 4, 5, or 6 a.m. This is just the World Cup shenanigans. It's been extremely fun, really meeting every single expectation, if not going beyond that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on England. Is it troubled? Signs. What are your thoughts on the US Women's National Team start? I want to hear your opinions and how the groups are playing out for you so far. As always, to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter, and I will see you later.